Welcome to Applications of Bloom's Taxonomy. This presentation will discuss how to use Bloom's Taxonomy in a classroom setting. By the end of the lesson, you will be able to define key features of Bloom's Taxonomy, identify core components of well-written learning objectives, as well as describe the relationship between Bloom's Taxonomy, content standards, lesson planning, and assessment. So let's review. Why do we use Bloom's Taxonomy? Bloom's Taxonomy provides a framework for learning, teaching, and assessing both the effectiveness of instruction and the abilities of students. Using Bloom's Taxonomy can help teachers make sure they are not only teaching students at a remembering and understanding level, but that they are also seeking to help students use knowledge in applications, analyses, evaluations, and creations. As previously viewed, this table shows us how the cognitive process dimension and the knowledge dimensions relate to each other. We can use the concepts demonstrated in this table as we are developing learning objectives. The action we choose in our learning objective determines the level of complexity of our lesson. If a lesson is an introductory lesson, chances are we would not expect students to be at the analyze or evaluate level. Instead, we may focus on lessons at the remember level. Conversely, if students had a solid understanding of the concept, we may ask them to use this knowledge to analyze, evaluate, or create. Let's talk about the importance of learning objectives. Teachers need learning objectives to help integrate plans across a day, a week, a unit, connect content and assessment around learning, guide the selection of activities that will achieve the objective, give learners a clear picture of what to expect as well as what's expected of them, and we need objectives to help us form the basis of evaluating teacher, learner, and curriculum effectiveness. When we evaluate learning objectives to examine their quality and effectiveness, we can use the acronym SMART to help us see if they are specific, measurable, observable, attainable, relevant, and targeted to the learner. Objectives need to be specific and clear so that everyone who reads them can know what is going to happen. They need to be measurable and observable. This happens when we use action verbs to describe what the students will be doing. As we develop learning objectives, we need to ensure that they are attainable by considering the target audience, time, and conditions. Finally, the objectives need to be relevant and targeted to the learner. So, how do we write objectives? Well, we have to make sure that they have 4 components: the audience, behavior, condition, and degree. The audience in most objectives is the students or the person the objectives are written for. The behavior describes what students are doing. This should be an action verb, something that is observable and measurable. This is the part where we use the verbs from Bloom's taxonomy list. The condition is the description of what is happening in the situation. This could be where, what, with whom, or how. And finally, we have the degree. This is the level of performance that is expected of the student. The degree tells us when we know if the objective is mastered. The degree also tells us how to develop our assessment to measure the objective. Take a look at these sample objectives. After listening to the story Little Red Riding Hood, the students will name 3 major characters from the story. In this objective, the audience is the student, the behavior is naming, the condition is after listening to the story Little Red Riding Hood, and the degree is naming 3 major characters. Now let's look at the second example. Students will use a chart to locate the spelling of unknown words to spell words with 90% spelling accuracy within their daily journal writing. The audience is still the student. The behavior is use a chart. The condition is within their daily journal writing, and the degree is with 90% spelling accuracy. As you can see, the order of the components of the objective does not matter as much as just making sure all of the components are within the objectives. You can change words around in order to make the objective make sense for you. Take a moment to read this objective and see if you can identify the audience, behavior, condition, and degree on your own. Given free access to any material in the classroom, the students will create a fictional animal that includes 4 of the characteristics of a reptile. Did you have the audience as the students, the behavior as creating a fictional animal, the condition as given free access to any material in the classroom, and the degree as includes at least 4 of the characters of a reptile? As a side note, you may notice that sometimes the condition components are found in multiple places within the objective. Let's review this objective from the previous slide. Students will use a chart to locate the spelling of unknown words to spell words with 90% accuracy within their daily journal writing. Do you think the teacher meant the focus of this lesson to be journal writing? Or is the focus of this lesson using the chart to help students spell words? Take a moment to think about it. Well, the correct answer is both. As the objective stated, the behavior is using the chart. This behavior is found within the conditions of daily journal writing, and we are measuring the outcome by the student spelling words with 90% accuracy. So the components of an objective work together to describe the learning conditions and outcomes. Teachers then use these objectives to plan lessons. As one begins thinking of planning lessons for this objective, we might ask ourselves, do students know how to use the chart independently? Are they even aware of when they have questions about how to spell words? What skill is more important to us at this time? Knowing if the students can use the chart, or knowing if the students can spell the words correctly? The answer to these types of questions will help us determine how to plan our lesson. So we can see that objectives written using Bloom's taxonomy drive planning. Whenever we discuss planning, we also have to consider assessment. Teachers use objectives to guide not only the lessons planned, but also how to measure student progress. As we talked about, using the degree and conditions of an objective helps us to determine what and how to assess. Thinking back to the previous example, if we wanted to know whether or not the student could go to the chart to look up words, we would have to take a direct measure of this behavior. We could do this by using a frequency count or by using observational data. But this is when we return back to Bloom's taxonomy. When we examine the behavior of the objective, or the verb, we can see that in this objective, it is an apply objective. So, this tells us we need to measure how the students are able to apply the skill. For this example, we can do this by using journal writing. The students are applying the skill of looking up the spelling words on a chart to their daily journal writing. So you can see the objective, which uses Bloom's taxonomy, helps us to determine the type of assessment we will use. We have shown that Bloom's taxonomy relates directly to assessment. The higher the levels on Bloom's taxonomy, the more complex the assessments will need to be. For example, when we have skills in the Remember-Understand level, we can use multiple choice tests, matching, sequencing, or activities which require students to choose the best answer. However, at the apply level, we have to examine the student's performance on activities, such as a simulation performance or a demonstration. Sometimes we use rubrics, observational data, and rating scales. At the Analyze and Evaluate levels, we have to find ways to objectively measure discussions, reviews, critiques, and at the Creation level, we are measuring something the students have created or constructed. So you can see how assessment becomes more complicated as the levels progress. So what does this all mean? Well, it means that the objective, which uses Bloom's taxonomy, drives not only the learning activity, but also the assessment. The following slides will provide a flowchart which describes the relationship between learning standards, lessons, and assessment. As we have found out, there are differing levels of Bloom's taxonomy within the state learning standards. Key terms like increasing complexity occur throughout the standards documents. In order to know where students are in relation to the state expectations, we have to conduct a preliminary assessment. Then this assessment helps us select the learning standards for our lesson. From the results of the preliminary assessment, we develop learning objectives using Bloom's taxonomy. These objectives are driven by the state learning standards. Once the objectives have been identified, we begin to plan our lessons and other learning activities to develop these skills. And as we are implementing lessons, we are also conducting classroom-based assessment. These classroom-based assessments are directly related to the learning objectives and should measure the behaviors stated in the learning objectives. We use the results of our classroom-based assessment to make our instructional decisions. Then we continue to refer back to the state learning standards and follow the process again. This process should be repeated over and over again throughout the school year. In summary, we have seen that Bloom's taxonomy, instructional objectives, lesson plans, and state standards are all interrelated. We know that our learning objectives are derived from the action words included in Bloom's taxonomy. We must always assess student progress based on the learning objectives, with the goal of all lessons to be to help students move to higher level thinking skills. Now, take some time to review the Bloom's taxonomy materials found within the online course materials.